Welcome back, everybody, to the ZMM show. You know, Adam, a lot of us play video games. Guys, gals, all around the world, we play our games. We love our games. We love new games. But what I can't stand these days are these games that are being put out and they're not completed. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk today, whatever, about games that basically, they're releasing in alpha and beta status, and yet these developers want, at least half price, if not almost full price. Adam, do you own any games that are currently still now in alpha or beta?
I do, actually. Thanks for having me on again. I own a game called Atlas Rogues that's based on an old kind of pay-to-play game called Atlas Reactor that is no longer up and running, which we may talk about more later. And haven't played it that much. I'm kind of hoping that it continues to develop, but yeah, I've got quite
and that's the exact point, and I own them too, and we're going to talk about a few tonight as we get into our conversation. But it's that exact point, like we buy into these things, and I guess we're, because we want something fresh, we want something new, but let's face it, I mean, most of these games, they're in development 2, 3. Look at the most recent Cyberpunk 2077. It was 8+ years in development, Adam. 8 years or more, and we had the launch that we saw, which we're a little bit behind on the times, but in case any of you were wondering, it was this, I think Cyberpunk was originally actually a board game, a very popular board game at that. And they finally made it into a pretty sweet-ass RPG, for a video game. Except that it launched completely bug-filled, almost unplayable on the last-gen consoles, which is PS4 and Xbox One. And, it's just a shithouse wreck. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounds like I have one friend who's an exception. He's played it, he's really enjoyed it, but it sounds like if you got a PS4 or an Xbox One, get used to it just almost not even being able to running so slowly that it's barely playable. The PS5 and the next gen Xbox both have, yes, thank you, have issues with crashes still, and it sounds like all but the upper echelon of PCs are struggling to run this thing well. So it doesn't work well on most systems it runs on, which is a problem for a game that's supposed to be launched.
And this was a top tier, basically AAA game. True, it didn't have a predecessor to maybe, compare it up to, but people were excited. They were ready to buy into this, and they did. Yeah. And so much so, Adam, I saw PS4 bundles with this game. Like the PS4 was tricked out and the colors or whatever. So these a-holes knew what they were doing. They knew that this thing wasn't ready, and yet they still sold the packages. I didn't get to read the full article. Apparently, the CEO of the company is in some big trouble right now, and I can only even imagine the lawsuits that are being drawn up right now due to false advertisement.
Microsoft, in particular, was notorious for it for a long time. They release something at full price, and then they give you continual tech support, and half of what they're doing is just fixing the bugs as they go along. Right. And really, you got to wait until about a year after the product comes out before it really runs the way it should be. And games, I think, weren't always like that, but they're becoming more and more that way. I think Cyberpunk is just the latest high-profile example.
Ever since the days of patching, that's all games are. They're half-working games that we'll get a patch out. Even day one patches, you get your game, you get it installed, and then you have like a 8 gig, install after that, with all the fixes that they needed because, we had to get those last minute. Like, I understand with these complex games and multiplayer and everything, there are going to be things that go wrong, but some of the stuff we've seen, Fallout 76, which myself and several of our buddies bought into, and, they're talking about next-gen graphics and this and that, and that was still only on the PS4, and it was ridiculous. It was just so silly. And, when you talk about even other games, so let's get on the PC side, I have a World War II one called Hell Let Loose. And mind you, this does not fall in the crap category. It's a really great first-person shooter. It's more realistic. It gets a little annoying because even a single bullet can take you out. But it looks great. And even though it's an alpha and they're still building, the developers give updates like almost every week, if not every couple of weeks. They bring new content, a couple times, I think a month. If not, if it's a big one, then they'll wait a little bit. but they keep bringing it. So that's when something can go right. But then you have other ones like 7 Days to Die, which we both own on the PS4, and it looked okay, right? But
Yeah.
but then you told me that you had it on PC, and I was like, oh, you know what the heck? I'll just go and grab it. It wasn't terribly expensive. I turned on that game, Adam, and remember I told you I was like, this is like night and day difference. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's very
I
different.
mean, I mean, no, the mechanics were very similar, but it looked beautiful, and I was like,
Right.
what happened? How did we go from PS4 looking like literally a shanty version of this game to the PC? Which, yeah, I got a nice PC, but even if you had an okay PC, it still looks light years better. What is happening with these developers?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it sounds like the trend we're really hitting on here is that, you know, almost whether you buy an early release game, an alpha game or not, the question is, what is the product that you're actually going to get
Yeah,
you know, when you buy the game? And I think with an alpha game, an early release game, you know that whatever product you buy is is likely to change,
that's
and
true.
that change could be anywhere from small or big over the course of your ownership of it. But you would hope that with, you know, games like Fallout 76 and Cyberpunk 2077, games that are marketed as complete packages, that when you pay full price for a game, that you would be stepping away from that dynamic. And unfortunately, I don't know that it's every game, but there are several high profile cases of games where that's not the case, where you're paying that full price and you're really still getting that, just an upgraded early access is what I would call it.
Absolutely. Is it ethical and is it right what they're doing? And when you look at something now, I think it's like pretty cut and dry. When you see what CD Projekt Red did with Cyberpunk 2077, I think it's absolutely fraudulent, and I think they had to have known what was going on, and to sell it still to their consumer base. Like everything's fine, we're good to go. That's unacceptable, and I do believe they should be sued, and there should be restitution paid out to the people, their time, and I don't want to say emotional distress, but maybe it is somewhat. I mean, we get all ramped up for these cool, high-profile games. I don't think I'll ever. I mean, I've said this several times over the last few years, but I think I'm pretty much there, and I haven't done one in a while, so I guess I'm holding to it. We'll never pre-order a game, probably ever again.
I don't blame you. I tend to wait, unless I know a lot of people playing it. I tend to wait a half a year to a year anymore before playing new games, if I'm being 100% honest with you. And I don't recommend that to anybody who's got a good paying job and just wants to be on top of things. I mean, if you want the newest, latest, and greatest, you can go out and get it. But yeah,
Or unless,
I gotta wait. I gotta wait at least until the reviews
or until I call
I'm
you
with you
and
on that
say,
one.
Adam, you got to get this game,
Right.
and you're like,
That does happen a lot. Yeah, it usually takes some convincing, but yeah, you can talk me into it.
you've wised
Um,
up on some, but usually though, I've usually had not led you many astray. I mean, usually the games we get, we play, we have fun with more or
yeah.
less. But there's
Well, I trust your advice on stuff like that, and that's kind of the point I was making. Like, I
yeah.
gotta know that the game's already been played and somebody likes it
Right. And you know what? And
for
that's what I'm pretty
reasons.
much at too. I'm like, I almost want to see the reviews, which is kind of sucks because since we have our channel, I would like to show games if I can, but
Right.
it's gonna have to be something I'm so super psyched about, which these days it's not much. There's just not that much great stuff coming out. And some could say, you're just getting old, you're just not it. Like, no, I really do like the game, but there's just certain ones that I seem to gravitate to more than ever. I mean, a simple as game as Rocket League, Adam, which you and I both still play, and I've been playing since launch. You jumped on, I don't think too long after, and here we are
Right.
many years later, and a lot of us are still playing it. It's such a simplistic
Right.
game, and it works. That's the amazing. It works.
Well, and I think the thing that's great about Rocket League is that the core game mechanic is fun. So like it is fun to
Right.
play a round of Rocket League. So no matter what they do to add or tweak or add new mode, they're building on something that is fundamentally fun.
Yes.
And you can contrast that with games like I know like one of the things that people really criticized about Star Wars Battlefront 2 when it first came out
Oh yeah.
was how much of it is in-game earnings and in-game purchases. And if the only reason to play the game is to unlock what's in the game, the question becomes, is it really worth playing? So
Yep.
it's good to have games that are fun to play.
That's a very good point. That was another one that was a huge botch on EA's side, right? That whole pay-to-play system, where basically
Right.
all of us would have to like play hours amongst crazy hours to get these things unlocked, or you can just go pay your monetary funds in, and go and grab those little fun little cash boxes. I'm just like, nothing's more annoying when I see those boxes. I'm just like, you guys are literally the worst. Which then they finally changed their model because we forced them to, more or less, surprisingly enough, to bring EA and even LucasArts. I'm not sure they had a hand in it all too, but anyways, to bring them to their knees and actually say okay. And eventually they produced a pretty damn awesome game after some tweaking. Anthem was another example of a really cool concept and a very neat game. It was kind of like the newer style Destiny, and you get these like Iron Man suits you can fly around with. It was very cool, but the content was super crazy, lacking, and the game just ended up just totally fizzling out. I mean, it was just a joke. I mean, every time they even tweeted something, all their used to be fans were coming out like, no one cares, and you guys screwed us, and I mean, the people are brutal, and I can understand, even as developers, that's got to be really a tough pill to swallow, and to hear everybody ripping on your stuff. It's not fun, especially when you put a lot of good time and energy into it. But let's face it, I mean, if it's half baked, then this is what's going to happen, and you're gonna get ripped.
I think a lot of times it's not always the developers calling the shots. A high profile example is Assassin's Creed. I know that the Assassin's Creed franchise has some staying power, but like the earlier renditions in particular, and I think even most of the games of the franchise have kind of stale side content to them. Like it feels like you're repeating the same thing over and over again. And there was a former developer that worked on the original project who said that literally the reason that content found its way into the first Assassin's Creed game is because a high-ranking official, I don't know if it was the president or someone else in the company, went home and asked his 5-year-old what he thought, and his 5-year-old thought it needed more missions like that. And so that's
interesting
why it got put in there. So these developers, it's hard to say how they even feel about it, because like, are they even getting to call the shots anyway? You know, you don't know.
No, you don't
know who's calling this.
And the reason I mentioned publishers in the background, I know. So one of our good buddies, Mike Appel, he loves Destiny through and through. And Destiny was a pretty dang cool game. We played the hell out of it in the earlier days, until it just got into that grindy, just going back and forth, the mission. And apparently, I believe it was Activision, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were the parent company over the actual publishers of the game. And then they were like pulling all the strings because they wanted all this monetary, like, let's have the content coming every 3 months and have them buy into it for another $20. Before you know it, you've sunk like $250, $300, $400 into this game. It's like when the game should have already included. I remember when we got Destiny 2, and I was pretty pumped, pretty excited. We played it for a while, but it didn't take not a couple months. We were through all the content. You're just down to playing like all these repeated missions and stuff, and we're just like, okay, we've done all this before in Destiny 1. I'm kind of done with this. Where's the rest of our content to give us, more? And it just wasn't there. And it came 3 months later in a DLC, and then 3 months later in another DLC. And I'm sorry, I guess, and this is, I guess, the old dog in me. I'm having a really hard time wanting to transition to that style of gaming.
I was talking to some friends of mine from college about this a couple weeks ago. The difference between grinding in a game versus being stuck at a spot and needing to just get better at the game in order to move forward.
Okay.
So like it's one thing if you're playing a game that's fun and challenging, and the reason you have to replay a section over and over again is because your reflexes need to be better, because your personal ability to play the game needs to improve. It's another thing entirely when the reason you're stuck is because you either have to grind away at the game. And now, to be fair, this has been happening in even RPGs from when we were kids. So this is not a new concept.
Right.
Or if there's something you need to buy in the game that can move you past it. So there's a very big difference between needing to actually get better at that game and needing to just throw hours into a game so your in-game character can get better. I think the former can be very fun and very rewarding. The latter is just time spent.
So that's a very good point, and I will throw off of that too. So there's most recent game I just purchased, Ghost of Tsushima. Okay, got the I think People's Choice Award for the year. Did not win Game of the Year. That went to another one, but Anyways, back to what we're talking about. It's a very cool game. It's got an awesome single player. You're basically a samurai, and you can go through, and it's very rewarding, like slashing people down with a samurai sword or bow or whatever. And it's more realistic style, and I was loving that. It just looks great. Well, this so happens they released a multiplayer version, which a couple of my buddies wanted me to buy into the game so we could all play multiplayer. And it's basically you're just fighting off, waves and waves of enemies, but it is a lot of fun trying to coordinate and finish these guys off. You can assassinate, jump from top off of buildings, and thrust your swords down. You can do bow moves. There's perk systems, but like everything, there's like leveling, right? So the end game is getting to their raid, okay, which is basically a 4-man op where you're going in and trying to complete some crazy crazy hard mission. And of course, they want your gear level to be a certain size. Now, the cool thing about this is it didn't take very long for me to start getting to where I need to be. So I don't feel like it's that Destiny where I'm like, oh, I got to replay that mission, 12 times before I do it. But of course, man, that's probably even a bad example. It'd probably be even more than that. But with Ghost of Tsushima, I felt like I could get in. I was still able to play with my buddies who already had high-leveled characters, but they still wanted to play with me. And what was interesting was, even at times, even though we were playing there was a bronze, silver, and gold level, but even when they were playing the lower levels, they were even finding it kind of challenging for some reason. Maybe there was a small upgrade in difficulty. I don't believe it was, but maybe they somehow tiered it because they were such high level. But we were still having a good time with it. So that's something where, like I said, it's kind of behind a gate, but the gate isn't too far down the line, so you don't feel you have to play weeks on weeks of just random gameplay to finally get to what you want to do, which is the raid. It's very weird how we pay into these games, even sometimes knowing it's going to be a shit show, pretty much. That it's not going to be what we really want. And they even tell you, even at least PC games on Steam, they're like, this game is in alpha, and we have the right to pretty much continue development, stop development, do whatever we want to do, and you're at the mercy of whatever they choose.
And it may even be that the major takeaway anymore is whether it's an alpha game, whether it's advertised as an alpha game, an early release game, or a fully budgeted game, that unless you're just willing to drop the money and see what happens, and hey, if you are, more power to you, but unless you're willing to do that, if there's any level of investment, if you're going to be disappointed if the title doesn't work out, I think you almost owe it to yourself to go and at least read an article or two and see what you're getting yourself into, because it just seems like there's no guarantee that the game that's going to release is either going to be fun in spite of all the energy it gets into it, or is it even going to work?
Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you did stick in this far or whatever. What do you think about the titles? I mean, are you willing to pay in if you see a cool concept and they want half price for it, and you know that this game may get finished or it may not get? Will you pay into that? Will you pay your $30 or $40, play it and have a little bit of fun and maybe a little bit of frustration in between? Or will you just skip it out and wait till it's completed? And furthermore, the completed games, what will you do? Will you pre-order these games as you always have in the past? Or will you stick to your guns and just wait till the reviews come out and let them be the guinea pigs and try everything out? We'd love to hear your comments below.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Just in general, what's your opinion on games? Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? Do you trust indie games? Do you trust the AAA games?
Yes.
Where's your allegiance in all of this?
It's a great question. I mean, our games, literally, are they getting worse over time? Which I wouldn't say all games, because it's not true. Like Ghost of Tsushima, like I just played, was pretty badass. And there are a lot of other neat ones too. So we'll see what's coming out here in the future. We'll see if we can get some gameplay. We'll get Adam back out here. We actually doing pretty good in Rocket League. Although you've seen us here and there, we got up to like almost high gold, almost platinum status. So that's pretty neat. So we're looking forward to that. So this is the Z-Man Show, Mike and Adam. Make sure to come out on Wednesdays and see our content. And we'll have some movie reviews coming up in the future. Some hopefully some ones that come out recently. We're looking at Greyhound 2020, which was an Apple production and a damn good one at that. So if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Come back out and talk about it with us. It's a thrill ride. So thanks for coming out. Make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys at the next review.
See you next week, guys.